Welcome back, everyone. We continue your Commitment 2022 election guide, and we are now turning to the U.S. Senate races.
And this is an unusual election because Oklahomans will vote to fill both seats November 8th. So who do you want to represent you at our nation's capital? Let's start with the race, Evan, to fill Senator Jim Inhofe's seat. The longtime lawmaker announced that he would be retiring back in March.
Yes, U.S. Representative Markwayne Mullin and former U.S. Representative Kendra Horn also facing off. Horn represented Oklahoma's 5th congressional district for one term. She was unseated, you might remember, by current U.S. Congresswoman Stephanie Bice during the 2020 election. Now, Mullin has served as a U.S. representative for District 2 since 2012. He's now giving up that seat to run for Senate. KOCO's Shelby Cashman sat down with both candidates.
We're all feeling it. Gas prices, grocery prices, mortgage rates, I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
So I guess I just want to ask you, lay out for me some of your plans to help struggling Americans.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're right. We're feeling it. I'm feeling it. I think most of us are. We need a comprehensive and sensible energy policy that ensures that we have abundant, affordable domestic sources of energy across the board. And we need to make sure that, including oil and gas and renewables and emerging technologies.
The first thing we got to do, we got to become energy independent. We shouldn't be relying on OPEC and the cartels that are just chasing the dollar. They don't care about our economy. We shouldn't be funding Russia's war in Ukraine because of failed Biden policies that's causing inflation to go up.
Where do you stand on what we should be doing with our oil right now?
Well, this is one of the places where I have the biggest disagreements with this administration. I mean, I will work with anyone when it's good for Oklahoma. I'll stand up to anyone when it's not. But the idea that just taking from our oil reserves is a solution is, I think it's a wrong-headed approach to this, just as the idea of trying to eliminate oil and gas that some people want to do and transition away. We need an all-of-the-above approach.
You've got to cut the size of government. If you cut the size of government, you limit the bureaucracy. And by the way, when you limit the bureaucracy, you're going to encourage business owners that spend so much of their time trying to comply.
Well, the House of Representatives passed a $13.6 billion emergency aid bill for Ukraine for defense, economic assistance, and humanitarian aid. There's also $4 billion to help refugees, as well as provisions to enforce sanctions against Russia.
You backed $40 billion initially in military aid. That was criticized a bit by people of your own party. At this point, are we sending too much money to Ukraine at this point?
Well, it's got to be accountable. And keep in mind, the $40 billion wasn't directly to Ukraine. Most of it was replenish our weaponry. We had sent a lot of our weapons to NATO allies that had sent their weapons to Ukraine. We have to support them, of course. But really, we need to be supporting the whole region because I would say this isn't necessarily our fight. This is Europe's fight. And Germany, Great Britain, France, they should be taking the lead in this.
Are you comfortable with the amount of money that we have sent to Ukraine at this point?
We can't send a signal that someone like Vladimir Putin is going to get away with just invading another sovereign foreign nation. It is incredibly important. That doesn't mean we're writing a blank check, but it means that we have to be there and thoughtful and work with our allies and make sure that we're not just giving Putin a pass.
Moving to just one question on abortion here. You know, a lot of it was a victory for states' rights, is what y'all said. So now the movement is towards a federal ban. Is it a states' rights issue or is it a federal issue?
You know, I'm excited about it, about Oklahoma. We're not killing any babies right now.
So if elected, you will continue to fight for the federal ban?
I'll continue to fight to save all these babies. I mean, if that comes from us taking each fight to the state level, then we'll take it to each state level. Whatever we have to do to make sure that we save these babies, that's my goal.
How do you plan to fight against that in the Senate who want to impose it federally?
Yeah. Oklahoma has the most extreme abortion ban in the country. That is government overreach, plain and simple. Almost zero exceptions for rape or incest or the life of the woman. That has impacts, and we criminalize doctors. That has impacts on women as individuals. It has impacts on our ability to attract and retain medical professionals, on jobs and economic opportunity. And that's a big difference between myself and Markwayne.
Is there anything that you learned from your time in the House that you hope to bring if elected to the Senate?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the things that I learned, that I experienced firsthand, is that when we have people who are willing to talk to their colleagues on both sides of the aisle to explore where we can find common ground, that we can get things done. I think we need more people working for Oklahomans who understand that. I have good relationships with members of the rest of our delegation, including Senator Inhofe, whose shoes I am seeking to fill.
I've had to learn how to negotiate up there. I've had to learn to take people's ideas together, figure out if that works or if it doesn't work.
On both sides of the aisle.
On both sides of the aisle. And then say, all right, let's move forward, or this isn't going to work, and wait for a better timing. Because sometimes the policy is great, but the timing's wrong. I've never went to a customer and said, oh, by the way, are you a Republican or Democrat? I need to know before I can work for you. You didn't do that. I didn't hire people, are you a Republican or Democrat? You hire them based on their responsibility, and you get a job based on need. And I take that same approach to politics.
And now we want to get over to the other seat at the U.S. Senate. Incumbent Republican Senator James Lankford is running for re-election.
And he is facing a political newcomer, Democrat Madison Horn.
I spoke with both candidates about why they deserve your vote, the biggest issues facing Oklahoma right now and the country, and what we saw unfold January 6th at the U.S. Capitol.
Very, very humble upbringing, to the point that, my family has been here 53 years before the state was even founded. So we've been here a long time. I learned the importance of hard work. I learned the importance of community. My upbringing has allowed me to develop empathy and kindness and compassion, and those are not weaknesses. And I think that we have forgotten about that as a society.
Democrat Madison Horn of Stillwell, Oklahoma, has never run for political office. She said she decided to run for a spot to represent you at the U.S. Capitol because of what she was seeing in rural Oklahoma.
The fact that no one is paying attention to our rural areas. No one understands the problems facing our energy ecosystem. No one understands how to stop the disinformation and all the nasty rhetoric and what that is doing to our country. There's too many egos in politics. Leadership is not about power, and we've really shifted that focus in politics and not focusing on people.
Horn works in cybersecurity, and she says that sets her apart.
Right now, within the 21st century, there are so many challenges that demands people to understand the basics of technology. We need someone in a position that is going to be able to see how our world is so interconnected from a global perspective. Obviously, the cyber piece. My background allows me to be a candidate of the moment.
Madison Horn saying her work in cybersecurity makes her a unique choice to unseat longtime Oklahoma politician, current U.S. Senator James Lankford, who is now working to send a message of unity and moving forward.
For months, I've been talking about this very simple principle of the first word of our Constitution is the word we. And it seems like as Americans, we have just simply forgotten that we're about we.
Both candidates say the divisive rhetoric across the country is concerning.
We seem to be trying to out-hate each other. If there's somebody you hate, you should scream at them louder. And if someone's screaming at you, you should scream back at them louder. That doesn't solve anything.
What are some of the biggest things you're hearing from Oklahomans right now as you're talking with them?
Price of eggs, price of gas. Where are we going as a nation? A lot of people ask me about border security and where does this go long term. A lot of conversations right now about drug abuse in our state and a lot of concerns about that, and those two are connected. We need to address that, and people see it.
Back to, you've been hearing from Oklahomans about the price of gas. I'd like to buy a new home, the price of eggs. What do you attribute this inflation to, and how do you fix it?
The economy was returning after COVID. People were getting jobs and they were moving, and it was finally starting to restart again.
He says that's when Democrats passed $2 trillion of additional aid, which Lankford says spun the country into inflation.
There's really two big ways to be able to attack this. One is for the Federal Reserve to dramatically raise interest rates, and so people stop buying homes, stop buying cars, stop taking out personal loans. It's hard for small businesses to be able to get a loan, and it slows the economy down that way.
He says it's better to focus on increased oil production, more pipelines, which will lower fuel costs.
The administration is going after the interest rates and ignoring the cost of fuel right now, and I think that's a mistake. We've got to increase the supply of fuel out there so that that the price can go down. That means more pipelines.
Horn says voters mostly talked to her about trust. Trust that she worries was eroded during the riots at the U.S. Capitol January 6th of 2021, and the blame she puts on Lankford through an Instagram post.
It said Lankford took lead role in efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
By saying that he was going to question the election. And so for me as an elected official to undermine our democratic process, then he should be held accountable for that. Now, we do need to move forward as a nation so that we continue thinking about our election integrity. And now that's, again, another area where I think that we need to build up and ensure that those systems are trusted by everyone.
She said Lankford is failing. He took a lead role in efforts to overturn the 2020 election.
Clearly, I wasn't trying to overturn an election, as there were lots of questions and issues just about the election, about how it was counted. Those are reasonable questions that have been asked by Democrats in the past and Republicans in the past.
Lankford insists that he was just trying to pause the process by 10 days, wait for the questions to be answered, and then certify the election.
Do you regret taking that stance?
I don't, actually, because there were thousands of Oklahomans that were contacting me and saying, how do we get answers to these questions?
But then when you saw what was unfolding on January 6th, that's when you decided maybe that wasn't what you wanted to do.
Once there's a riot in the Capitol, it's ongoing. The question's very different now. Now the question is, do we want to keep doing this for 10 more days? But us asking questions doesn't cause a riot. That's absurd to be able to say that.
Do you believe the election was fair, and do you trust our process?
Joe Biden is the elected president. He is the certified president of the United States. And that's been an interesting question that people would ask me.
Did he win fairly?
There's no evidence to say he did not, in the sense that what happened was the states all certified their elections and went through it.
At the end of the interviews, both Horn and Lankford had a message for you to stay invested and involved in government.
I want people to know that their voice does matter, their vote does matter. You know, the moment they say that it does not, then they give up their power to make a difference.
Continue to lean in. Quite frankly, when I talk to a lot of Oklahomans, I get either people that are engaged or people that have just disengaged. They don't like the anger, they don't like the volume, and so they're just checking out saying, I don't care anymore. America is worth fighting for.
As we've mentioned, it is very rare for both U.S. Senate seats to be on the ballot in the same election. This is actually the only third time it's happened in our state. It happened December 10th of 1907 here in Oklahoma. That was right after statehood. It did not happen again until 2014. That was when Tom Coburn resigned.